Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 23. For my Spanish-speaking friends, bienvenido y buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades. Bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast. Once again, I thank you all for joining me. My name is Karey Carbaugh, and so that's where the name of the podcast comes from. I am a person with low vision, and tonight we're going to go into some nitty-gritty details, I guess you could say. This podcast is going to be a little bit different. I've got a lot of statistics and figures and stuff to share. You might have noticed the title of this podcast is Mythbusters, and we're going to be talking about myths regarding low vision or vision impairment. And a lot of these statistics, it's hard to separate the low vision from the blind. So if I refer to blind, that means blind or low vision. As we get started here, if you could let me know where you're joining in from, and if you're joining me live or on the replay, drop a live or replay or an L or R in the comments. I would greatly appreciate that. It's always great to know who's watching this live, who's catching it on the replay. We're getting a lot more people catching this on the replay, not quite as many live. We might have to take a look at some point and see if this is a good time for everybody or not. But we'll keep going here for a while with this time slot. And as always, I do appreciate you joining me. I'm not going to try to respond to comments live tonight. Sometimes I try to, sometimes I don't. Tonight I'm going to be using my phone a bit more for some of the statistics and things. So I'm not going to be able to have my phone on Facebook to catch and respond to any of the live comments. But I will reply to them after we're done here. So please do engage and let me know as we're going through this if you're finding value, if you're getting value from this. Drop the word V or value, the word value or the letter V in the comments. That would be greatly appreciated and greatly helpful. So let's dive right in here because we've got a lot to share tonight. Some of these myths might be more obvious than others. And some of them you'll see maybe aren't entirely myth, but a lot of them are. And I got this idea. I always like to share my sources and where I get some of these ideas because a lot of these don't come from me. I came across a page this week called, I want to make sure I get the name right, Blind on the Move. And he had a post with, I believe there were 4 or 5 myths. And that's kind of where I started this idea from. And then I built upon that and got some statistics online. So we'll see how many of these you knew about. Maybe how many of these you thought were true yourself. As we're going through these, if you'd like to let me know whether you thought one of these facts was true, I've got 10 of them tonight. So let me know whether you thought one of them was true or not. Maybe there's some surprises along the way. Maybe there's some that you hadn't heard about. Let me know that in the comments too. And again, I will respond afterward. Okay, so number 1. Some of these I found even kind of interesting. So if you'll forgive me while I look at my phone here, that's the easiest way for me to go through some of these. Hang on just a second. I've got something popping up here on my phone that I got to get rid of. There we go. Okay, so this is the easiest way for me to go through some of these. So if I'm not looking at the screen, I'm not trying to be rude, but I want to make sure that I don't miss any of the details here. So, myth number 1. People who are blind see total darkness. Let me know if you think that's true or not so true. Drop that in the comments. Actually, blindness is a spectrum, and many people have some usable vision, like myself. Some people have light perception. Some people can see shapes and colors. So it's really a broad spectrum, ranging from completely blind, which actually isn't total darkness. That's a myth in and of itself. I didn't think to put that in as one of these myths, but I had a friend, or have a friend, we still are in contact, and he explained it to me one time. I asked him, because he used to be able to see some. I don't know that he ever had full vision, but he's completely blind now. And so I was asking him if he sees black or darkness. And he said, no, he doesn't see anything. And so even darkness or black, you're seeing something. And he doesn't see anything. And the way he described it, I thought was kind of interesting. He said, face forward and tell me what you can see behind your head or behind your back without turning around. You have no sensation. It's not black behind your head. It's the absence of any vision. And that's what a totally blind person, for the most part, might experience. Now, a lot of these too, different people have different types of vision loss, and so some of these are generalities. But I thought that was an interesting perspective from him as someone who has seen before compared to someone who has never seen. And so actually only about 10 to 15% of those who are considered legally blind have absolutely no sight. So it's about 10 to 15%. It's a pretty small percentage. Legal blindness, as we discussed in a prior podcast, is anyone who sees less than 20/200. So what a person with normal vision would see at approximately 200 feet away would look roughly the same to a person with 2200 vision at 20 feet away. And so legal blindness is anything below that. And only 10 to 15% of those, again, are totally blind with absence of all vision. Okay, so myth number 2. People who are blind can't live independently. Do you believe that to be true or not so true? Or maybe you're unsure. Actually, many people can live independently with the proper tools and training. Some people don't need a lot of extra tools or training. Some people require some adaptation of their homes, of their appliances in their homes, raised dots. There's certain things you can put on the edges of your oven racks if you can't see, so that you can touch the oven rack without it getting hot. There's a number of different adaptations that people with low vision or no vision can use. So that's actually a myth. Most blind people can, and many do, live independently. In fact, 26% of blind people live alone, blind or visually impaired. I happen to be one of those 26%. And so, well, you might say that's not, 26% is not all that high. Those are actually just the people that are living alone. Which brings me to my next myth. And we'll come back to that here in a moment. Myth number 3. Most blind people never marry or never have successful relationships. Do you believe that to be true? Not so true? Or maybe you don't know. Let me know in the comments. And again, I'll respond to these afterward. Actually, 65% or more are married or live with a partner. And so they may not be married, they may live with a committed partner, same-sex partner, maybe someone of the opposite sex, but they're not actually married. That's 65%. So if we add that together, 65% plus the other 26%, that brings us up to 91% of people live alone or with a partner and live independently. But then it starts to get really interesting, because people who are blind hang on a minute, I'm skipping over a few of these because I already covered them. I should have probably put this as a separate myth, but I didn't. But only about 16.5% of blind people have gotten a divorce. So 16.5% of people have gotten a divorce. And this is compared to about 63% of all Americans who were married in 2024 have been through a divorce. So 63% compared to about 16%. So blind people are much less likely to get divorced than a sighted person, or than people who are not blind. The overall divorce rate in 2024 for first-time marriages was between 40% and 50%. So that 53% is right in the, I think I said 63 before. It's actually 53, so I apologize that I misread that. But somewhere between 40 and 50%, maybe as high as 53% of Americans get divorced, compared to about 16%, between 16 and 17% of blind or visually impaired people go through a divorce. So that's kind of an interesting statistic. Like I say, I should have probably had that as one of my myths, and I didn't. So myth number 4, all people who are blind read Braille. This is an interesting one. Let me know in the comments if you think that this is true or not, or maybe about how many. Maybe most blind people read Braille. Do you believe that to be true? Let me know that. Actually, only a small fraction of people who are blind read Braille. The rest, like myself, I don't read any Braille at all. I never learned Braille. So the rest, like myself, read large print or use audio. Much of this is a preference, much like anyone. Some people prefer to read a book. Some people prefer audiobooks. Some people prefer paperbacks. Some people prefer hardbacks. Much the same with a person with a vision disability. Some people prefer to read Braille. Others prefer to read large print or rely on audible methods, whether that be digital or recorded media of some type. And so actually, fewer than 7 to 10% of the 1.3 million legally blind people in the United States read Braille. So let me repeat that. Fewer than 7 to 10%. So even if we take the high end of that, fewer than 10% of people who are legally blind read Braille. Is that surprising to you? Let me know. It was a little surprising to me. I knew it was low, but I didn't think it was quite that low. So myth number 5, we're almost halfway done here. People who are blind have super senses. Let me know if you believe that's true, or partially true, or you're not sure, or if you think that's false. This is one that I hear a lot. Actually, people who are blind don't have superpowers or super senses. We learn to maybe develop some of our other senses a little better. Or I came across a source that had a really interesting way of putting it that I had never really thought about before. And it says researchers believe that people who are blind or low vision pay more attention to how an object smells, and I think the same thing could be hearing. Pay more attention to how something sounds or smells. This is the part that I found interesting. And it says they devote more cognitive energy toward cataloging that information. So they devote more cognitive energy toward cataloging the information about smell or sound. I had never heard it put that way, but that was I found that to be an interesting way of describing it. That we not only pay more attention, but then we catalog that information and put more energy into cataloging that. More, what did it say? Cognitive energy into cataloging that information. So that was kind of an interesting find for me as I was preparing for this podcast. Number 6. This is another interesting one. Most blind people use a white cane or a dog for navigation. Let me know if you believe that one's true or false, or maybe you're unsure. Maybe you've never thought about it before. I think many people do believe that most blind people use a cane, and I threw dog in there as well, and you'll see why here in a moment. Actually, that is also not true. Fewer than 2 to 8% of blind people use a white cane for navigation. And only around 5% use a dog guide. The rest actually use either a sighted guide, so maybe their partner, or what usable vision they have, like myself. So if you add all that together, even taking the high end of the cane users at 8%, plus about 5% that use dog guides, that's still only 13% of people that use what's considered to be sort of the traditional methods of navigation. The rest rely on sighted guides or, like myself, their own usable vision that they have left. Was that one a surprise to you? It was a little bit of a surprise to me. I didn't expect it to be quite that low. Let me know in the comments if you found that surprising. Number 7, we're getting close here. Vision loss is fairly uncommon Do you believe that to be true or not so true? We're starting to get into the why should we even care about any of this? Is vision loss very common? Actually, 51.9 million Americans over the age of 18 have reported experiencing some type of significant vision loss. And of course, that's all self-reported, so what someone might think is significant might not be significant to someone else. But that's a pretty big number. 51.9 million people. I actually didn't convert that to a percentage, but that's a pretty significant number. Number 8. Got a typo here, sorry. Most blind people want to work or are working. Let me know if you believe that's true. Are most blind people working, or do most blind people want to work? What do you think? True? False? Unsure? Or never thought about it? Actually, this one is kind of a mix. Only 30% of people who are blind are employed. I was actually surprised it was that high because I've seen some other statistics several years ago that were much, much lower. 30% are employed, and around 37% are not looking for work. So 30% are employed, 37% are not looking, and around 33% are considered unemployed. So really only about 37% of blind people don't want to or don't care to work or can't work. It's interesting how they determine the unemployment rates. You have to actually be looking for a job to be considered unemployed. If you've settled into Social Security or disability or some other program where you're not looking for a job, then you're not even considered unemployed anymore. That's where the 37% of people who are not looking, people who are blind or visually impaired that are not looking for work. That's why I wanted to break it down that way, because 30% are actively working, and make sure I get this right. 30% are actively looking, and 30% are actively working, 33% are actively looking. So that's a total of 63% who are either working or want to work, and only 33%, roughly 33% are not even trying to work. Was that a surprise to you? A lot of people think that most people with a vision disability don't work and just sit at home and don't want to work. It's actually only about a third. And the other 2/3 are either working or want to work. Now, of those who want to work, only about half of them are working. So that's a bit of a interesting statistic. Many blind people are looking for work but can't find it. They either can't find an employer who will take a chance on them, give them an opportunity, or a number of other reasons that someone might not be working. Number 9, we're getting very close to the end here. Very few blind people are educated in public schools. Do you believe that to be true? Or not true? Or not sure? If you saw my short video that I posted last weekend in honor of graduation, I was the first student with a vision impairment to start in kindergarten and go clear through the public schools here in Longmont, where I live. So, has that changed since I was in school? Because when I was in school, very few blind people, or vision impaired people even, were in public schools. So what do you think? Has that changed? Or is it still about the same? So the myth or the point here is that very few blind people are educated in public schools. Do you believe that to be true, false, or not sure? Actually, today, 95% of U.S. students with a disability, so not just blindness, but a disability, attend public schools in their neighborhood. And that includes about 90% of people who are blind or have low vision that are attending their local neighborhood schools. So about 90%. I couldn't find a good statistic from back when I was in school would have been in the 70s primarily. I couldn't find a good statistic for that, but it's significantly higher than it was then, for sure. So is that a surprise to you? Did you expect more people to either be in an institution or not even educated at all? 90% are in public schools. Now we're going to get into this last statistics, which is a little bit different than that. It skews it a little bit. So our last, number 10 myth here is that blind people have low levels of education. So they're not educated, they're very uneducated. Do you believe that to be true or false or unsure? Or maybe you haven't thought about it. Let me know that. Actually, I couldn't find any good comparison statistics comparing these numbers to the general population. I'll keep looking, and I may do, the reason I titled this a part 1 video is because I may do a follow-on, and that could be part of my follow-on video. Let me know if you'd like to see a follow-on video, or if you have ideas on other myths, other beliefs that you hold about people who are blind or visually impaired, or people in general who are disabled. Let me know some of those ideas or myths that you might have, and I can do some research into that. But let's jump into this number 10. So once again, number 10 is that very few blind people are educated. Blind people as a whole, or visually impaired people as a whole, are uneducated, whatever that means to you. So probably not completing high school, maybe not even really completing much of any education. Do you believe that to be true, false, or unsure? Actually, only 22.3% of blind or visually impaired people have less than a high school education. 31.6% have a high school diploma or a GED but have not gone any further than high school. So that is about 53, almost 54% that didn't go to college. And about 30.3% have some college, and 15.7% of blind or visually impaired people have graduated from college and either have a bachelor's degree or higher, a bachelor's or an advanced master's or PhD degree. So while that's not a huge number at 15.7%, I think a lot of people believe that number to be a lot lower than that. Let me know if you thought it was lower than that. Again, I don't have good numbers to compare that to the general population. That's one of the things I was looking for. However, the last number I did find that 15.7% is compared to 38.3% of the general population in America has graduated from college or gone on beyond that. So it is considerably less, the number of people that have graduated from college. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. The number might actually be higher than that because that's based on self-reporting. And as someone who works for a college, I know that we have a lot more students with disabilities than those that report their disability. So it's based on those that have reported, probably those who need services. There may be people who don't require any assistance or services. They figured it out on their own. So they're not going to be counted in that statistic because they're not self-identifying to the college, or likely maybe not even on like a U.S. census. So with all of these statistics, the numbers may be a little bit skewed by those who report and who self-identify. There still is a bit of a stigma around someone with a disability, and so some people don't tend to identify. So with that is all of my myths, but I wanted to wrap this up as we bring this in for a landing with, so what? Why do we care? Why should any of us care about any of this? Is it just a feel-good thing, or what difference does it make? And I found a quote, or came across a quote here I think it was actually a month or two ago, that I really liked, and I wasn't sure. I knew I was going to use it on one of these podcasts, but I didn't know where, and I think this is a good spot to slip it in here. As the why do we care? Everyone will become disabled if they are lucky enough. Once again, everyone will become disabled if they are lucky enough. And that was a quote from Maria Town, who used to work for the federal government. I couldn't find exactly what her title was, but she worked under President Obama in the federal government in the area of disabilities. And so again, everyone will become disabled if they are lucky enough. What did she mean by that? Well, most of us as we age will find ourselves losing some of our senses, whether it's vision, whether it's hearing, whether it's mobility, maybe can't move as well as we used to. We're all going to experience the loss of certain abilities if we live long enough, whatever that means. For some people it happens much earlier in life. But if we're lucky enough to live long enough, each one of us, if we don't already have a limitation or a disability, is going to experience some type of limitation or disability. And those of us who have a disability may find that we become more limited, either with the same disability or with different disabilities. So beyond the feel good and the, it's a feel good thing, and it's we need to care about each other. Beyond that, each one of us is going to have it creep into our lives at some point if we're lucky enough. So with that, I hope you found value in this. If you did, let me know in the comments. This one went a little bit longer than some of them, so I do apologize for the length. But hopefully you found value. Hopefully it was worthwhile. Again, if you are watching live, let me know that with a live or an L in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, drop me an R or a replay in the comments. And if you would like to be added to my email list that I'm starting to develop and hope to be sending some things out in the very near future for. There's some ideas that are building. I had a couple of ideas that I came across this week. So if you'd like to be added to my email list, drop the word email in the comments or direct message me on Facebook or Instagram primarily. I watch Facebook messages the most. So you can drop me a message on Facebook or just drop me the word email and I'll reach out to you. Would love to add you to my list. And again, I hope you got value in this. I appreciate you tuning in. This has been the Karey Carbaugh podcast. And once again, my name is Karey Carbaugh for those who don't know me. And I hope you enjoyed this. I appreciate your support. Appreciate your continued tuning in. And I will look forward to seeing you next week on the next episode of the Karey Carbaugh podcast, or if I pop up somewhere in the meantime. Until then, make it a great week. Be a blessing to someone around you, and do something positive for someone else. Take care and have a great evening or a great day, depending on when you're watching this. Bye for now.